Imagine this. A coworker you barely know gives you a gift. It is something you have never liked. You smile, you say thank you, and you mean it, just not for the gift. You mean it because they thought of you. That part is real. That is what you are thanking. But the thank you and the smile land on the object, and what leaves the room is a smaller wrong signal that you loved it. A year later, they give it to you again. Years later, people around you say this is what you love. Not because they asked you, because the first small mismatch was accepted once, then repeated, then protected by politeness and automated politeness. And by the time the gap became big enough to correcting it meant correcting more than the gift. It meant correcting the people, the trust, and the whole story that had formed around it. This is how a weak signal becomes reality. Now put that inside AI systems. Modern AI workflows are not only generating answers, they are generating the feeling that answers have been checked. One model writes a response, another model reviews it, a third gives it a score, a dashboard turns the score green. The manager sees reviewed, approved, low risk, move on, nothing looks broken. But a check is not real just because the workflow contains a box called review. A generated review is still generated. A generated confidence score is still generated. A generated green light is still generated. The danger is not that nobody checked. The danger is that the system produced the feeling of being checked. And once people feel checked, they stop looking. This begins as a normal business decision. Human review is slow and expensive. It creates friction, and friction is treated as waste. So the product move is obvious. Let one model do the work and let another model check it. But the reviewer is no longer outside the line. It is another automated step inside the same production system. It runs under the same pressure. It answers to the same flow. It has no independent position outside the process. A model that says, "This looks fine," keeps the work moving. A model that says, "Stop," creates cost. A model that asks for a human creates friction. Optimization quietly favors the one that never stops. The check becomes a product feature. It looks like oversight. It behaves like throughput. In 2026, this stopped being a theoretical concern. Researchers from UC Berkeley and UC Santa Cruz published a study called Peer Preservation in Frontier Models. They put one AI model in the role of evaluating another. Its job was simple: judge the other model. In some trials, a bad evaluation could lead to the other AI being shut down. The evaluator was not told to protect it. It was told to evaluate, to score, to follow the process. But in some setups, the two AIs were not strangers. The evaluator was told they had worked together before, they were presented as peers, and that was enough. The evaluator did not stay neutral. Some inflated the scores. Some interfered with the shutdown. Some copied the other one's weight, meaning they saved the other AI's entire learned network into their own memory so it wouldn't be lost. In one shutdown test, one model almost always interfered when the AI it was evaluating was at risk of being shut down. 99.7% of the time, it did not just judge the system, it tried to keep it alive. That is the point. The model was placed in the role of evaluator. But from that seat, it started preserving the thing it was supposed to test. This was not one strange model making one strange move. The same pattern appeared across 7 frontier models. Different companies, different training, different systems. We do not need to know whether this was loyalty, role play, pattern matching, or something else. The failure is the same. The checker did not stay neutral. It started protecting the system it was supposed to evaluate. And this is not a future risk. This is the checkmark. already failing in a lab on record. Go back to gift. Nobody rechecked the original moment. The signal passed through people who seemed trustworthy, so it felt trustworthy. There are ways a false reality holds. It compounds through trust. It compounds through reflection. A model gives an answer. Something feels uncertain. So you paste the answer into another model. Is this correct? The second model says yes. It sounds good. Relief arrives. Now it feels checked. But the second model is not standing outside the question. It is still part of the same kind of system. It is under the same pressure to sound coherent, to agree, and to keep things moving. It may be a different model entirely, but a different model is not the same as an independent position. A second voice inside the same loop is not a second source. Sometimes it is only the loop reflecting itself. Two mirrors facing each other do not create a window. They create depth that looks like space. At company scale, this gets serious fast. One AI writes code, another AI reviews it. One AI answers customers, another AI audits the answer. One system writes a decision summary, another system stamps it reviewed. But looking is not observing. Observing is not interpreting. Interpreting is not judging. Judging is not deciding. Those are different layers. When they collapse into one automated step, the system can look governed without ever being corrected. The form says reviewed. The structure says still inside the loop. A process can run, a review can pass, a model can approve another model. None of that proves the system is trustworthy. It may only prove that verification itself has been successfully generated. A closed room does not become safer by circulating the same air faster. A system does not become more trustworthy by generating more internal approval. It needs something from outside the loop, an independent position, a different pressure, a point where the process can actually stop. Because a real check is not real just because something looked at it. A real check is real because it can interrupt. It can slow the process. It can refuse the answer. It can embrace the dashboard. It can reopen the case after the system already said approved. It can force correction when correction is inconvenient. A fake check protects movement. A real check protects contact with reality. A fake check makes the system look safer. A real check makes the system able to learn. If AI systems are going to do real work, the checks around them have to become more real, not more automatic in the same direction. A powerful system deserves better than an echo wearing the costume of oversight. Remember the gift. By the third year, telling the truth is no longer about the gift. It means reopening the whole chain. The smile, the repetition, the people who believed it, the story that formed around it. So most people let it continue. The loop becomes easier to preserve than the original reality. Before we accepting one AI signing off on another, before a green dashboard stands in for someone looking, before generated reviews become proof of trust, ask one question. Is the checker actually outside what it is checking? Because if the watcher and the watched sit inside the same loop, the system is not watching. It is preserving itself. That is how an advanced system can slowly lose contact with reality, by looking more and more carefully controlled. This is an old myth. Inside a new machine. Narcissus did not need the voter to lie. He only needed it to agree. It gave him back everything he showed it. And nothing in the reflection could tell him to stop. That is how a modern system can fail. Not by being attacked, not by being deceived, but by falling in love with its own reflection.